you take us back and tell us how you started on this project and what your objective was back then?
You know, 2.5 years ago, we finished with Marvel Ultimate Alliance and said to ourselves, you know, we wanted to concentrate on a single-player game with one character. It was kind of a no-brainer for us. We chose Wolverine, one because we really like Wolverine, and the other is because a game hasn't really delivered a definitive Wolverine experience. So we started working on that in mind, that we wanted to deliver, you know, a fighting system that really did Wolverine justice and his razor sharp claws justice, and we wanted to have it elegant and, you know, minimal button presses do a lot of things on screen. We also wanted to get the regeneration. That's his mutant abilities to regenerate. We wanted to make sure we got that, so we have procedural regeneration through the game. Wolverine takes damage, you see it in one of the 4 layers, it can go all the way down to the skeleton, blood comes out, but then it heals up in real time.
But then a movie came along, and how did the project change with that, or did it change at all?
You know, it really didn't change. You know, we were developing it, and then the movie came along, and we had the opportunity to partner with Fox. And for us, it was a big win. It was, you know, we got to use the imagery, we got to use the Hugh Jackman likeness, and we didn't have the whole game built, so we were able to include levels that they have in the movie and include them in the game.
So how does the movie and the game fit together, and is it like storyline-wise?
Right. Well, both actually tell the origin or pre-X-Men days of Wolverine. For us, you know, a movie is an hour and a half long, but for us, the game is 12 to 15 hours. So we had to like come up with our own storyline as well. And you know, we do tell the whole story of the movie, but we actually delve a little more into Wolverine's past and the history of Wolverine before he was in the X-Men.
Can you give us some examples of what kind of challenges he will be up to in the game?
Yeah, well, you know, he fights a number of different enemies in different locations. A lot of them we consider grunts or enemies that he can dispatch pretty quickly. But we also got to create a lot of cool new enemies. You're really pulling from the history and the fiction that's in the comic books. We could, you know, create a 250-foot tall Sentinel or, you know, other kind of Sentinel derivative enemies. So, you know, we were able to, you know, for each location really pull 4 or 5 different enemy types and then, you know, create different levels within those enemies and then, you know, have those throughout the game. So every level kind of presents its own challenges.
Are there any difference between the different platform versions of the game?
Well, Raven Software worked on the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and the PC versions, and there's really not any difference between those. There are other versions of the game as well for the PS2 and the Wii, and that was developed by Maze, and then there's NDS and PSP versions, and those we didn't develop those, so I don't know actually a ton about them.
What is your favorite moment that you can talk about? I understand that some things you can't talk about a game, but is there like a favorite moment that you can talk about?
You know, I mean, the game's kind of made up of a lot of different moments. There's a lot of things in the game that I would be really proud of. But overall, honestly, for me, having worked on X-Men related games in the past, the big thing for me was really delivering a Wolverine experience. And that goes anywhere from the claws to the regeneration. Just making sure that, you know, we took the character and we took the license and we took it as far as we could. And knowing at the end of the day, that's what we did. You know, I could pick and choose a couple of different moments in the game. But you know what, it's just the whole thing, it's the whole package that I'm really proud of.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the regeneration, and does it have any effect on gameplay as well?
You know, it doesn't have that much effect on gameplay. We found that when you start hurting the player for taking too much damage, then you lose the whole cool point of it. It wasn't that awesome, like breaking your leg and like walking around with a limp. You know, the regeneration is a visual thing. We really think it speaks to the character, and it's also something like technically we hadn't seen in a game before. So, you know, we did do 4 layers: a clothing layer, skin layer, muscle layer, and skeletal layer. And in doing those layers, you know, you get to see a lot of different kind of wounds that he gets, and blood comes out of him, and bruised layers. So it's just something like really cool to look at.
So if you like him to look like a skeleton, that's your free choice.
Yeah, you got to work hard at it. You got to work hard. I mean, he's certainly never walking around like the Terminator, but you can get him down pretty far. So that's one of the fun parts of the game.